Hi everyone, it's Lisa here. I'm back today with a couple of cards for you, and today I'm going to be using a background stamp from the new Simon Says stamp release called Rest and Refresh, and it is the Anchors background stamp, and I'm going to be doing a technique using an acrylic block for watercolour stamping. So for this technique I'm going to be using Tim Holtz Distress watercolour cardstock and some distress inks. I've put the colours up on the screen, but for this panel I'm using picked raspberry, ripe persimmon and wild honey, and I'm just adding those onto an acrylic block which is 2 3/4 by 4 inches. It's really much easier if you have them all in minis, because obviously the larger ones are quite big, but I did manage to get the colour on, and I'm spraying that really liberally with just some plain water. And I press it down firmly onto the cardstock, and then I put something really heavy on top and I set it to one side while I work on my second panel. And this one uses Mermaid, Lagoon, Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn, and I'm adding it to my block as I did for the first one, but at a slight diagonal, and I go over it here just to make sure that I've got enough ink on the block. And again I spray it with some water and I press that firmly down. I don't think I had quite as much water on that panel, but it did work out okay. And you'll see as I start to remove the blocks here, they have been left for about 5 minutes. You do get a little bit of ink that pulls, so I'm just dabbing that off with a paper towel. And I do the same here with the second panel, and leaving them for about 5 minutes does really help to make sure that the ink has sunk into the cardstock so that you get a really good layer of colour. So just dabbing up all that little bit of excess there, and that finishes the watercolouring part of the panels. And I'm just using my heat gun here just to dry the panels off, because I want to go ahead and rip the edges around the watercoloured section. So I'm taking a ruler here and I'm just laying that down, pressing it down really firmly, and I'm just ripping along that edge. This gives the panel a little bit more of a rustic, sort of unfinished feel to it, and I thought it would go quite well with the background of Anchors, which you'll see in a moment. But it's really easy to tear that off, and any little bits, any sort of straggly bits that don't come off properly first time, you can just pick them off, as you can see me doing there. And I left a little white border. I thought that it would look quite nice just to have that little bit of an edge around the panel. I'm doing the same here on the second panel. I have sped this up a little bit as you've seen me do the first one, but I think it adds a really nice touch, and it also matches the slightly uneven edge that you get from the acrylic block. So I'm going to move on to the stamping now, and I'm using the Misty for this, and I've taken out the foam pad because I'm going to be using a background stamp. And what I've done is I've actually put some removable tape on the back of my watercoloured panels so that it doesn't shift. I'm just lining the stamp up there, putting some anti-static powder over it, and I'm going to stamp that using Versamark ink because I'm going to do some heat embossing. Whilst I've got the Misty out, I thought I'd stamp both panels at the same time. So I'm also going to take the blue and green panel, put some removable tape onto the back of that, just pop that in, and it's the same process for the first one. I use an anti-static bag, some Versamark ink, and I just stamp that down. I do switch it around here. It really doesn't make any difference at the end of the day, because the anchors are actually in 2 different directions on the background stamp anyway. I thought a gold embossing powder would look really pretty with the colours on the first panel, but for the second panel I just used a white embossing powder. Both of these are from Hero Arts, and I apply those and then I go ahead and heat set them. Working on the sentiments now, I've taken Simon Says Stamp Vacation Time. This came out last year, and I'm using a sentiment which says you've been working hard, time for a break. A really nice encouragement sentiment. So I'm stamping that down onto some Nina 110 with Versamark ink, and I'm going to use the same gold embossing powder on that sentiment as I did on the panel, just to tie those two together. But for the second card, I thought I would use two coordinating sentiments from Simon Says Stamp Tiny Words, and they are a gift for you and thank you. I thought that that would be a really nice card to give to my mum and dad, actually, as well as the first one. They both like cruising, and I thought the first one could encourage them to take that holiday that they really deserve, and the second card they could take with them, and they could maybe leave a tip in that to give to the cleaning staff or something. So I stamped that up. Again, I'm applying Versamark ink, and I'm using black cardstock this time and some white embossing powder. Once I've heat set the sentiments, I'm taking my Simon Says Stamp Sentiment Label dies. I absolutely love these dies. I honestly don't know how I managed without them, to be honest. I use them on pretty much every card, and they are fantastic for giving you a really good even trim on your sentiments. So I'm lining them both up here. I mean, it doesn't matter if you stamp your sentiment down wonky onto the cardstock, you just line the die up and it gives you an even cut every single time. So I ran those through the Gemini Junior, and I'm just going to go ahead and assemble the cards now. I've put some foam tape onto the back of both of the panels and onto the back of the sentiments, and I'm just pressing those down onto some base cards. I've got two base cards here. They're Nina 110 pound cardstock, and they're A2 size top folding. Just making sure that that's nice and straight, and then I'll go ahead and assemble the second card. So the same again, I've put some foam tape on the back, but for this one I thought I would stagger both of the sentiments just down the centre of the panel, just so that it reads a gift for you, thank you. Again, I'm lining that up and just making sure that's straight, and then popping the sentiments on top. So that finishes both of my cards for today. I hope that you enjoyed seeing this technique in action. It's one that I saw Jennifer Maguire do a few years ago, and I hadn't done it for a while and thought it would be fun to revisit it today. So there's so many options you can do with different colours and different size blocks and different layouts, and it's really fun to go back and try it again and get some more use out of those inks. Thanks very much for joining me today. I'm going to list all the supplies that I've used in the description below and over at my blog in case you're interested, and I'll be back soon with another project for you. Bye for now.